So, similarly to the last video I did last night on the killers, tonight's video is going to be covering the victims or the survivor portion of the gameplay. And much like the previous build, where I say I'm going to be taking and I'm going to be rating the survivors 1 through 5, I'm going to be rating them without the addition of perks. We're strictly looking at their base set of stats, and we're going to be looking at their base powers a little bit. Now, unlike Killer, in our Killer video, it was, you know, there was a gap here, a gap here. There were some little gaps between some of the positions. Survivor is much closer together. Now, there's 4 survivors instead of 5. Now, don't look at the 5th survivor and say, hey, so we'll just never play him. Because part of the thing that's funny is that if you build them properly with perks and things, each one of the characters has the ability to be very good. The majority of the cast can play as either the number 1 survivor in a game all the way down to about 4 or 5. It really comes down to the build, how you're using them, how they synergize together. The family's a lot more rigid in how they synergize because there's less components to it. You're always going to have a Bubba. So your other 2 killers are just rotating around Bubba to an extent. It's like, okay, you have 2 trackers in Cook and Johnny. You know, they're your trackers. You have 2 chasers in Hitchhiker and Sissy. They can chase. You have Cook, who has some slowdown. Sissy has some slowdown. Hitchhiker has some slowdown. But Johnny and Bubba are just straight aggro characters. You know, there's not really a lot of loops. You can kind of complement based off of what you want to run. Survivor's goal is to get out. They're trying to GTFO. Because of that, they have to work together a lot more. What's interesting too, and I want to pick Sunny, a lot of these stats are very misleading as to what they do. Toughness says it determines the victim's survivability rate, maximum health, and incapacitation recovery time. What this means is the more points you put into toughness, the bigger your health bar gets, the shorter your incapacitation timer is. And survivability rate determines close encounter win rate. Next is endurance. This is the victim's total stamina capacity, stamina drain, and stamina regen. High endurance means longer sprint and recovers faster from sprint. It's strictly tied to running with L1 and sprinting with X. Don't ask me about control, about PC or Xbox. I'm playing this on a PS4, so just move the button over. Strength. So this determines stun durations from sneak attacks, the difficulty of powerful activities, that being crawl spaces and generators, and then grappling. When they say grappling, overall grappling effectiveness means your win rate in a close encounter. Whereas survivability rate is your chance to not get executed. That's something I don't think a lot of people understand. In a close encounter, there are 2 metrics. There's a win and a loss, and there's a survivability aspect. You can lose a close encounter as a survivor and still live if you have stamina and if you have health. I've done this before. With a high enough toughness, it can be done. However, if you're out of health, you're out of stamina, you die. So, I think that's kind of misleading. Strength is really also the stun duration for sneak attacks, including Grandpa, by the way. Proficiency is anything that requires you to hold or tap square, with the exception of the aforementioned generators and crawl spaces. So, anytime you are doing an activity that requires you to hold a button or to tap a button, how fast the meter goes up to complete the objective is proficiency. Noise goes hand in hand. Stealth affects the noise meter component to that. This is why a character like Leland, who has 10 stealth, no matter how good his proficiency is, his stealth is what's going to, the noise meter is what's going to go up. My general rule of thumb is I prefer to play characters at 30 proficiency. The stealth isn't as important, but sturdy proficiency is the key thing I'm trying to get. The reason why I want the 30 proficiency is because at 30 proficiency, it enables me to complete a lot of tasks within 3 to 4 seconds. That's kind of a broad window I'm looking to do. Lock-picking doors, completing objectives, things of that nature. It's helpful for objectives. If you're looking for survivability, you want to focus on toughness and endurance. Both of these stats, you want these stats to be at 30 or above. Strength is really a stat you don't really have to focus on. Leland and Sunny are the two big brawlers on the team. Leland has 40, Sunny has 35. You don't have to worry about that. All of their attribute points are really going to be going into toughness, endurance, and proficiency, if you want to build proficiency at that. Many people tend to build Sunny for max endurance, with the leftover points being in toughness or stealth. A lot of Leland builds are endurance and the rest in toughness. Julia, where she's a runner and a stealthy person, a lot of builds on her are max endurance and the rest in stealth. Connie, where she's a lockpicker, she's primarily building proficiency in stealth similar to Julia, but I think her proficiency is high enough. You should be focusing more on toughness and endurance, in my opinion. And it's kind of interesting because she's supposed to be the tank. I would prioritize toughness over endurance, then go back to endurance with your leftovers, and maybe the proficiency at 20. Now, that's kind of a light overview on attributes just when you're assigning. Now, the thing I want to highlight the most in, like, ranking the individual characters, say, 1 through 5, the range that I have them is the reason why they're in a ranking. And if they're solo or competitive or group character. So, the number 5 character is Sunny. Sunny's stat distribution lends him to being a brawler. Although he has slightly less health than Leland does. He has slightly more endurance than Leland does. He has slightly less strength than Leland. He has around the same proficiency, and he has slightly better stealth. So, why is he at the bottom if his stat distribution is much similar to Leland's? The real reason is power difference here. Sunny, best case scenario, is the 3rd best character in a match. He's 3rd or 4th. Worst, he's 5th. He's not getting higher than 3 because of the way his power works. You can track noise, and you can track movement and things of that nature. If you look at how the power scales, the number 1 perk you would want here is lets the player identify if a noise was made by another victim or a family member. The fact that that's not base, that he can just, oh, I can detect noise, isn't really great. Without heightened sense at 3. You want this perk in order to determine who's in trouble or who do I run away from. Either or. He's kind of a basic bitch style character in that you're building him for his stats and you're building him for his skill tree more than you would be building him for his power. Ultimately, that's what keeps him at 5. Now, the argument for the 3 and the 4 is very contested in my opinion. You can go back and forth between Connie and Julie depending on what your preference is. My personal pick is that Connie is at 4, Julie is at 3, and then Anna Leland are fighting 1-2. So let's discuss the Julie-Connie debate first. Connie's at 4. Connie has the most game-breaking ability out of all of the characters in the focused ability. This lets you auto-lock pick a door, basically. You can pick a lock on a door in 2 seconds, if that. However, stamina gets cut by 50%. Family proximity warning gets cut by 50%. Now, and it also requires a lock pick to use. Her whole gimmick is she is the queen of lockpicking. This is Jill Valentine over here. The master of unlocking. Why is she 4? She really doesn't do anything else besides pick locks. Another interesting thing is when you look at perk distribution. I don't want to talk about build too much, but I do have to mention something on perk distribution. Okay? Let's talk perk distribution. You want to run Lucky Lockpicker so that you can keep your tools 50% of the time. You want to run Efficient Locksmith so that you can keep your lockpick 40% of the time. You want to run Bomb Squad so you can just pretty much always run 2 lockpicks. You no longer need Bone Strap except for close encounters. You're only using, because Bone Strap is useful for traps. If you're dedicated, I'm the unlock person, as Connie, so there's your 3 perks. So what else is fighting alongside it? Well, there's Pick on Me, where when you're opening a door, it gets highlighted for other survivors, which is good if you're not on comms, or if you're learning the game. Okay? Then you have Tool Tracks, so you can find tools at the start of a game, which can be one of the bigger issues as well. Her perk variety becomes very limited if you're taking on the I am the lockpick queen style role, so to speak. If you're not in that role, you're going to have a bad time. Now, another thing is looking at the trees. The best one you can run is either reducing the cooldown, taking the cooldown to 3 minutes, or no stamina cost. So if you do get caught, you can book it out of there. Now, the family proximity is still going to go off. But the family proximity is not really that bad. Now, the main issue that she has is that decision. Do you want quicker lockpicks where, okay, so what I'll do is I'll just run around and pick all the locks. That really doesn't help you win the game. That helps you open up the map, but it doesn't actually help you win the game. And if you take your perks and you build your perks around more survivability and say, I'll just use my power and 2 lockpicks, now the problem becomes, well, now I'm not going to, like, pick every single lock because I'm more about survivability. She's kind of a character where her whole gimmick is I pick locks. If I get caught, I'm dead. If I can't find lockpicks, I'm dead. If I can't find doors, I'm dead. That kind of is the reason why I have her here. And a lot of solo, when I play Survivor, I get a lot of Connies that don't open doors. A lot of Connies that want to run around like a mad lad, like they're playing Julie. It can work, sure, but you better open at least some damn door with your power. Your power literally has one job, which is unlocking doors. There's no other utility for your power besides I unlock door. Julie is at 3. And you could make the argument Connie can be anywhere from a 1 to a 4. But the 1 is if you're a Connie player that is, I'm super stealthy, I grab a lockpick, I open a door. I go back, grab a replacement lockpick if I need it. I go to the next door, open it. Next door, open it. And you're just opening all of the doors on the map. Although a lot of good killers will track based off of, especially early game, they'll be tracking, hey, this door's unlocked, somebody's been here. If you look at Julia, why I have her at 3 instead of 4, she's in a similar boat. Best case scenario, she's a 1. Worst case scenario, she's 4. She has more utility. Her stat distribution is mostly stealth and endurance. Off the bat, she's good at endurance. Now, she's not the only one that's good at endurance, but the reason why I prefer her is because her ability to get out of jail free is much easier. Her power gives her immunity to Cook and Johnny when it's active. The downside to that is you're never using your power for that tool, right? The whole, oh, Johnny has found your footsteps or Cook has heard you. You're not popping your power when that comes up. It's already too late. They've already got your ass. The main reason you run it is for stamina consumption. Basically, when she activates her power, her stamina consumption from running goes down dramatically. Now, if you look, what you have is you can reduce the duration, reduce the cooldown to 1.5 minutes. You can increase the duration to 20 seconds, or you can reduce the stamina consumption by 100%. That's the main thing I would prioritize. Now, one of the things that's important to note with this is she can kind of take on a role as a better Sunny, as the quote-unquote average survivor, right? Her job is that flex survivor. If you look, you have Connie as the lockpick queen, Leland and Anna are the brawlers and the combative ones a little bit more. If you have Sunny and Julie are both vying for this spot as the fill-in character. Julie has a big edge because of her ability to win chases with her skill. This lets you win a chase 90% of the time, especially if you are outdoors or if you're in a good part of the basement. If you're in a house or if you're not in a good spot in the basement, not so much. If you have 2 killers chasing you, that percentage drops from 90% down to 50%. But for most characters, 2 killers chasing you, your odds of escaping are only about 10 to 25%. She's at 50% because of this. And that's not even with, I would say her power needs to be at level 1 to be usable. Whereas Connie doesn't need any level to her power. But Connie's problem is that she's only good at picking locks, and the rest of the time is kind of like, hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing this. Julie can kind of just go out and do whatever. If you're a Dead by Daylight player, you can just go get aggro when your power's off cooldown and say, hey, I'm gonna get them to chase me over here, y'all go do something in another part of the map. She can use her ability to break chases as a solo player and a stealthy player. She has more utility and more value, which is why I have her at 3. Again, even though I like playing her, she's not the best. Leland and Anna is the toss-up at 1-2. You can make an argument either or. I think one of the main things is the skill gap. The skill gap between them is very big, and the thing on their power is very big. Leland, best case scenario, is a 1-3. Anna, best case scenario, is a 1-4. So I'm inclined to keep Leland at number 1. My advice is I think Leland is number 1 because he is easier to use out the gate, whereas Anna requires a little more. So let's talk Anna. Anna's stat distribution is primarily for toughness and strength. She has high HP and takes on a sort of brawler role. Her power, pain is nothing, cleanses poison and grants immunity to poison. This is basically a counter to Sissy. That's pretty much all that does. It doesn't cleanse serrated, and it doesn't cleanse the HP loss on chainsaw hit. If Bubba's running that. If it did, I would say she would be probably number 1. But it only counters Sissy. What her power does, while her power is active, you reduce the damage taken from attacks and falls by 60%. That is a decent chunk of damage reduction. Particularly from characters like Cook and Johnny that hit individually hard. And Bubba. Bubba's a special circumstance because Bubba's one-tap chainsaw swing is a lot harder to deal with than most other characters. The fact that she can get her damage reduction up to 80% is the reason why it can make her the best character in the game, but you have to be level 3 on Anna to have that. If you're not level 3, she loses a little bit of value. Because 80% damage reduction can basically mitigate any fall damage from a well And that's, to me, the main value. She can take the role as a pseudo-chaser, like Julia, and she can take the role of a pseudo-brawler like Leland. The recharge time on the ability and the ability durations are nice, but they're not game-breaking. The one here where melee attacks restore small amounts of stamina is not as impactful as a lot of people think it is. It's not a lot of stamina. It's not even, it's about 5% per hit. That's not enough. If it was 10% and that's like a full stamina bar, a full node of a stamina bar, that's one thing. In addition to this, because of this, she's not great for objectives compared to Connie and to a lesser extent even Julia. Her proficiency is lower, her stealth is lower. She has to build endurance extra. She has to build proficiency extra. She has to build stealth extra. What she does is she avoids taking large amounts of damage and can stay alive for long periods of time. This is good if you choose to use her to farm XP, because she can stay alive in matches longer and she can win extra chases longer if she's kitted out right. That brings me to Leland. Leland is the #1 survivor to me because of the fact that he can do some similar things. Now, his toughness isn't as good as Anna. It's a little bit better than Sunny. So he's not going to have a big health bar. His endurance is okay. His endurance is average at 30. His proficiency is okay. It's a little lower than you'd like. His strength is high. This enables Leland to be the brawler on the team. He goes after Grandpa the most. He's going for sneak attacks the most. He's using bone scrap and going for close encounters. High risk, high reward character. Now, I don't like the close encounter part where a lot of Lelands want to brawl and go close encounter all the time. I don't like that because what it means is he is putting himself at risk a lot of the times in a close encounter. If you get caught in a close encounter by a second family member, you die. End of discussion. So that's a trade-off you have to look at him at. A lot of people say, well, Leland sucks because of how long it takes for him to pick locks, how long it takes for him to complete objectives. He needs a teammate to do that. That's true. But you gotta look. A bone scrap with a close encounter stuns a teammate. His shoulder bash ability can stun teammates. His ability at level 1 with barge teammates will be stunned for 10 seconds. He's good right there. Because his whole strategy is now, I can stun person A, I can close encounter person B, and by the time, and I've won the close encounter by the time person A is out of their stun. Thus, I can immobilize 2 characters back to back. He buys the team a large amount of time. If you look at the skills, family members can be barged up to 12 seconds. That's not as, it's nice to have, but in my opinion, it's not as good as either the cooldown reduction to 2 minutes. Because one of the things a lot of people don't understand is you gotta look. I'd have to respec that, and I don't feel like respecing. I believe this one is 150 and this one's 180. Don't quote me on that. And then the concussive hit is nice because it can kind of stun them when they get out of it. That's what I'm working my way towards, ultimately. I'm going to take the stamina after a stun, because you can save your stun for the end of a chase as well. If you're being chased by one person, you can sprint. They're chasing you. Stun them at the end of the chase to get stamina back. Keep sprinting while they're stunned. This gives him chaser components that other characters don't have. He's not the physically tankiest character, but what he's very good at is drawing attention and winning attention. Buys all 3 other players time to do things. The reason to me why Anna and Leland are 1-2, by the way, has to do with that mechanic. With Anna and Leland's ability to draw attention in a coordinated team effort, the rest of the team can be doing objectives. If you're playing something like Anna, Leland, Connie, Julie, Connie grabs lockpicks and goes and gets doors. Julie's picking up Valve or Fuse, and they're going and doing 2 objectives at once. If you have Leland and Anna occupying killers, Anna can be dealing with Bubba because she can tank chainsaw hits easier. Leland can stun the other characters. Leland can stun both of the other 2. If they're monopolizing like that, then that means that the objective should be open. Sunny can be in a similar boat where Sunny can be a replacement for either Connie or Julia. But that, in my opinion, is the list for the Survivor side.